Hello to everyone. Today I'm going to talk about usage of infrared blanket. Yes. Simply, we got a lot of questions about usage of infrared blanket, why we want you to use it, how it works, how it will help your kids, and I think it's important questions, and we decided to make certain video in which we are going to explain why we use it. Yes, and but before we get to that point, I would say that a very important part is to understand what is the interstitial fluid inside of the human body, and why it's important. Because let's say it straight ahead is that straight away is that with usage of infrared blanket, we actually want to influence the consistency or fluidity of the interstitial fluid. We want to increase the flow, we want to increase the circulation of the interstitial fluid inside of the connective tissue, for the reason that in that way we are going to increase the nutrition of the cells, we are going to increase the as I said, nutrition to the cells, and also we are going to increase the cleaning of the metabolic products which cells make after using the nutrition. Yes, so that's the purpose of using the infrared blanket. But I want to also explain what is the interstitial fluid. You see, in the human body, we have like about 5 liters of blood. And this blood is contained inside of the blood vessels, arteries, veins, and capillaries. Yes? And in the same time, we have about 11 liters of interstitial fluid. So what I want to say is that if you compare the amounts of these fluids in our body, you can actually really starting to understand how interstitial fluid is important, because we have the 11 liters and it's basically everywhere, you know. It's actually contained inside of the tissues, and I will kind of explain the role of this interstitial fluid. So, of course, about 5 liters and 11 liters, we talk here about like average adult person, yes? So, you see, I just want to shortly to explain about blood circulation. So basically, what we know is that arteries, they are bringing the blood from the heart toward the tissues, yes? And it's oxygenated blood, it's, let's say, the fresh blood, yeah? And veins, they have the opposite role. They bring the blood from the tissues to from the organs and so on toward the heart, and then the blood is pumped from the heart to the lungs, and inside of the lungs there is a process where the blood actually takes the oxygen and becomes, let's say, clean, or I would say clean or fresh blood. So, and in the whole this story, there is a capillaries. They are the smallest blood vessels, and the actually exchange between the capillaries and interstitial fluids and the cells is happening there. So I will just show like this. So you see, if we imagine that this is kind of capillary, and you can see I draw it in the way that like a wall of the capillary is actually porous. Yes. So I made it that way on purpose, so that you understand that there is this kind of small doors where the different materials can get through. And then, so I will just write, here's capillaries, yes, and then I would say interstitial fluid, yes. And on the end, here, we have the cells. Here we can say we have cells. Some cells, yes. And but what we have to understand, so what is the interstitial fluid? It's actually fluid which fills up the spaces of our tissues. So basically interstitial fluid is all around the cells. Yes? And actually cells are using the interstitial fluid like medium with which they are communicating with the blood vessels also. Actually capillaries. So basically you have like inside of the capillaries you have different cells like red blood cells which brings the oxygen, and different other cells which bring the different materials. I would just say all the important materials which are needed for the nutrition of the cells actually comes to the capillaries, yes, and they are actually going, I'll just put it like this, so they are actually getting out from the capillaries, yes, and I would just say it like there can be salts, sugars, oxygen, hormones, different nutritions, water, and so on and so on. And all these materials actually going through the interstitial fluid, yes, and they are like going in through this interstitial fluid, and they're getting to the cells. The cells has the membranes, and they can get into the cells, yes, depending what the cell needs. But basically, what I'm trying to explain is the mechanisms how the different material, like different molecules, which are going from the capillaries into interstitial fluid and through interstitial fluid to the cells, how this process of feeding of the cell is happening, because this is important. Otherwise, cells won't be able to grow, to develop, differentiate, and so on. So this is the important role. And then interstitial fluid is like this kind of fluid in between. And also opposite process happens. For example, because inside of the cells there is energy, like oxygen is used to produce energy, and this energy we are using to so the cells can live. That we on this macro level that we can also live and so on. So, and then when this production is finished, certain substances or molecules are produced which need to be cleaned out. They're like junk, yes, and this need to be cleaned out. Well, again, this kind of materials, they are actually also going through the interstitial fluid, and they are actually going opposite into the capillaries, yes, into the capillaries, and then they are from the capillaries they are brought to the bigger blood vessels, and then they are cleaned afterwards in the lungs and the liver and other organs, kidneys. And so this is the basically mechanism how this nutrition is happening, yes? But then what is also important for you to understand is that what influences this exchange in the big amount is actually how interstitial fluid is thick. Yes, how thick it is. That means what is the density. Yes, and I want to explain simply and shortly that I'm not now talking about which materials go from the capillaries in and which goes through and out and so on. I'm just talking about what makes the interstitial fluid, what is made of. And what is made of is two basic elements. One is water, which is obvious because you know about, I think 75% of the human body is water. So the big part is water. And the second element is hyaluronic acid. But for you, of course, it's not so important to remember the names like of these different materials. Just point is that the combination of the water and the hyaluronic acid makes the interstitial fluid gives kind of gel kind of structure. I will give you an example. You know, when you're making the cakes, for example, and then you're buying the gelée, which you put into the water and you mix it, and when you put in the cake, it makes the cake firm. So this is kind of, this is the actually that's this kind of substance. And normal relationship is that inside of the inside of the interstitial fluid you have about 50 parts of the water and 1 part of the hyaluronic acid. So in this kind of relationship, the density of the interstitial fluid is normal. But what we see to the examinations when we work with the kids, as when we do examinations of the kids with different kind of weaknesses of the connective tissue, different kind of weaknesses of the body structure, is actually that this relationship is not normal. I will explain. So what we can, for example, see on the examinations is that when we take the skin of the children, we can see that underneath there is not so much layers. They are usually very thin. The skin usually can look like it's very bad quality, and it's like it looks like old skin and so on. The point is that that means that in many kids and adults with this problem, with these structural problems, actually the connective tissue is not able to retain water. So that means that in the process of the collapse of the structure, big portion of water is lost. I will just give an example. Imagine that you don't have any more like this normal relationship. There is less water. For example, 25 parts of water and, for example, 1 part of the hyaluronic acid. What then happens, of course, because it's less water in the same amount of hyaluronic acid, the density of the interstitial fluid goes up. That practically means that this exchange between the cells and the capillaries, it's like reducing, falling down, because this is more thick. The fluidity is dropping, it becomes more thick, and then exchange rate falls down. So that's basically what's happening with your kids. In that kind of situation, what we have to do logically, we want to increase to make this interstitial fluid less thick, more thin, more fluid, and in that way we want to increase the exchange. We want to allow cells to get more of the nutritions so that they are able to improve, to grow, and to develop, and so on. So, and you see, this is very important part. Understanding that, you see, what's normal. Of course, you're feeding your child, you're giving the nutritions, you're giving the food, yes, which is good quality, and you're giving the water and so on. But the point is not about that. It's not about what you put in the mouth of your child. The problem is whatever you put in the mouth of your child, it stops here, because the exchange, the absorption on the level of the interstitial fluid doesn't happen enough. So that's why, if you ask yourself, I'm giving my child a lot of food, give water and everything, but my child is still like very thin, it doesn't gain weight. Well, that's the reason why. Because the absorption of the level of the cells and the interstitial fluid as a medium between the capillaries and the cells doesn't work properly. So our idea is very simple, that by using the infrared blanket, actually, I would say we are kind of melt this interstitial fluid so that it starts to circulate better, and when that happens, the cells are going to get more of the nutritions and more water and so on. And of course, this is a kind of process which takes time, but to the repeated usage, this state of the interstitial fluid, which has become more fluent, getting more and more permanent, and over time we are like building the level of quality of the interstitial fluid, and as the process happening, the idea is also that you get, how to say, that the body starts to actually take some more water in and retain it inside of the tissues. So this is basically the idea. And the next thing is, of course, you will ask yourself how it's possible that by using infrared blanket or infrared radiation, we can actually change the consistency of the interstitial fluid. How we do it? Okay, this is something that we are going to explain now.